This story begins long before the iceberg, before the panic, before the freezing Atlantic claimed more than 1,500 lives. It begins with ambition. At the start of the 20th century, the world was changing faster than ever before. The Industrial Revolution had transformed cities, transportation, and communication. Humanity had begun to believe that technology could conquer nature itself. Ships were the airplanes of that era. Crossing the Atlantic Ocean was the most important journey in the world. It connected Europe and America, the Old World and the New World. Competition between shipping companies was intense. Every company wanted to build ships that were faster, bigger, and more luxurious than their rivals. One company wanted to win this race forever. That company was White Star Line. Instead of building the fastest ships, White Star Line decided to build the most luxurious ships ever created. They wanted passengers to feel like royalty while crossing the ocean. To make this dream real, they partnered with the famous Belfast shipyard Harland and Wolff. The plan was bold. Build 3 giant sister ships, Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. Titanic would become the crown jewel. Building the giant. Construction began in 1909. More than 15,000 workers spent 3 years building the ship. They worked in dangerous conditions, using the tools of the early 1900s. Massive steel plates, rivets, cranes, and steam-powered machines. The scale of the ship shocked the world. Titanic was 882 feet long. It weighed more than 46,000 tons. Its engines generated 46,000 horsepower. It had 29 giant boilers, burning hundreds of tons of coal every day. This floating city needed a crew of nearly 900 people just to operate. The ship had 16 watertight compartments. Engineers believed this design made the ship practically unsinkable. That word, unsinkable, would soon become tragically famous. The chief designer of the ship was Thomas Andrews. Personally oversaw every detail, ensuring the ship was as safe and luxurious as possible. Another important figure was J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of White Star Line. Titanic represented his company's greatest achievement, a floating palace. Titanic was more than transportation. It was a luxury hotel floating across the ocean. First-class passengers experienced unmatched luxury. Grand staircases with crystal chandeliers, elegant dining rooms serving multi-course meals, smoking rooms, lounges, libraries, Turkish baths, squash courts, and even a heated swimming pool. The wealthiest people in the world traveled aboard Titanic. But below the luxury decks was another world. Third-class passengers lived in simpler accommodations. Many were immigrants traveling to America to start new lives. For them, Titanic represented hope, a ticket to opportunity. Different classes rarely mixed. Titanic reflected the social structure of the early 1900s. The maiden voyage begins. On April 10th, 1912, the ship finally began its first journey from Southampton. The destination, New York City. Crowds gathered to watch the enormous ship depart. People cheered and waved. Newspapers called it the greatest ship ever built. The captain was Edward Smith, a respected and experienced sailor. This voyage would be his last before retirement. Titanic stopped briefly in France and Ireland to pick up more passengers before heading into the open Atlantic. More than 2,200 people were now on board. Excitement filled the air. No one knew they were sailing toward disaster. Life on board. For the first few days, the voyage felt magical. Passengers walked along the decks, breathing fresh ocean air. Children played games. Musicians performed every evening. Meals were grand social events. Meanwhile, deep inside the ship, engineers worked constantly to keep the massive engines running. Coal workers shoveled coal day and night in extreme heat. Above them, passengers danced and celebrated. Titanic was alive with activity. Iceberg warnings. By April 14th, Titanic had reached the icy waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. Radio operators began receiving warnings from nearby ships. Icebergs were drifting into the shipping lanes. Several warnings arrived throughout the day, but Titanic continued at nearly full speed. The sea was calm. The sky was clear. Confidence remained high. No one felt fear. The night that changed history. April 14th, 1912, jam 11:40 p.m. A lookout spotted a dark shape ahead. Iceberg, right ahead. The crew reacted immediately. Engines reversed. The ship tried to turn, but Titanic was too large, too heavy, too fast. The iceberg scraped along the side of the ship, tearing open the hull below the waterline. Passengers barely felt the impact. Many thought it was nothing. But deep inside the ship, seawater rushed into the compartments. Thomas Andrews quickly realized the truth. Titanic would sink. Realization and panic. At first, the crew tried to avoid panic. Passengers were told to put on life jackets and go to the deck. Then came the devastating truth. There were lifeboats for only half the people on board. Why? Because the ship was considered The order was given. Women and children first. Families were separated forever in those moments. The band continued to play music to keep people calm. Some passengers refused to believe the ship would sink. Many lifeboats left half empty in the early stages. Time was running out. The final hour. After midnight, the front of the ship began sinking lower. Water flooded the decks. The angle of the ship increased. Panic spread everywhere. At 2 a.m., the bow disappeared underwater. People clung to railings. Others jumped into the freezing ocean. At 2:20 a.m., Titanic broke apart and vanished beneath the Atlantic. The unsinkable ship was gone. The freezing ocean. The water temperature was near freezing. Survival time, 10 to 20 minutes. More than 1,000 people were left in the water. Their cries echoed across the dark ocean. Gradually, the voices faded. Rescue. 2 hours later, the rescue ship RMS Carpathia arrived. It rescued about 700 survivors. Over 1,500 people were gone. Global shock. The world was stunned. Newspapers across the globe reported the tragedy. Titanic became the greatest peacetime maritime disaster of its time. But the tragedy led to change. New safety laws were created. Ships must carry lifeboats for everyone. Radio communication must operate 24 hours a day. Ice patrol systems were established. The ocean would never be traveled the same way again. Discovery of the wreck. In 1985, explorers finally located Titanic, nearly 3.8 kilometers beneath the ocean. The ship lies broken, silent, and slowly disappearing into the deep sea. A time capsule of history. Legacy. Titanic became more than a ship. It became a symbol of ambition, courage, love, sacrifice, and human error. It reminds us that no matter how advanced we become, nature is still stronger. And every time we tell this story, we remember the people, the families, the dreams, the lives that never reached their destination. More than 1,500 dreams still rest beneath the Atlantic Ocean, and the legend of Titanic lives on forever.